When woman with Down syndrome is humiliated at the bank, dismissed and denied what belongs to her, the room stays silent. No one steps in, no one stops it. But just as hope starts slipping away, Big Shaq walks in. And with one powerful moment, everything changes. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel and tell us, where are you watching from? Share in the comments below. The sun shines brightly over downtown Atlanta, reflecting off the glass windows of Horizon First National Bank. Inside, the bank hums with the usual weekday rush, clicking keyboards, hushed conversations, and the impatient tapping of shoes on polished marble floors. Customers shift in line, checking their watches, sighing as tellers process transactions at an exasperatingly slow pace. Near the entrance, Lillian Carter hesitates before stepping inside. She clutches her purse close, her fingers gripping the worn strap as if it's the only thing keeping her steady. Today is important. Her late father left her this money, and she needs to withdraw it. It's not a lot, but it means everything to her. She glances around, her round, expressive eyes scanning the room. She knows how people look at her, like she's different, like she doesn't belong, but she shakes off the feeling. Her dad always told her to be brave, to stand tall no matter what. Taking a deep breath, she joins the line. The bank employees barely acknowledge her presence, but the ones who do exchange quick glances. Some smirk, others whisper. A security guard near the door shifts uncomfortably, but says nothing. At the counter, a young teller named Tracy Monroe sighs dramatically, already annoyed before Lillian even speaks. Tracy, dressed in a crisp navy blue blazer, pushes her sleek brown hair over one shoulder and taps her nails against the counter. Lillian smiles hesitantly. "Good morning. I need to withdraw money, please." Tracy raises an eyebrow, already impatient. "Do you have an account here?" Her voice is coated in forced politeness, but the edge is unmistakable. "Yes," Lillian says, fumbling with her purse. She pulls out a folded paper with her account details. Her hands tremble slightly, not because she's scared, but because she knows this routine all too well. Tracy takes the paper with a sigh and types into her computer. Her expression shifts almost immediately, not with concern, but with something sharper. She glances at her co-worker, Paul Whitaker, at the next counter. Paul leans over just enough to peek at the screen, then smirks. "You sure this account is yours?" Tracy asks, tilting her head. Lillian stiffens. "Yes, my dad. He set it up for me before he passed away." The mention of her father's death does nothing to soften Tracy's expression. If anything, she looks even more dismissive. "Huh. Let me check something real quick." She turns to Paul, muttering something under her breath. Paul snickers, but keeps his eyes on his own screen. Customers in line glance over, sensing something is off but saying nothing. No one ever says anything. Minutes pass. The tension thickens. Lillian shifts on her feet, her heart pounding just a little faster now. "Is there a problem?" she asks, voice quieter this time. Tracy barely looks up, just verifying some details. But she isn't typing anymore. Her fingers rest idly on the keyboard as she shares another knowing glance with Paul. Lillian exhales slowly. She knows when people are messing with her. It's not new. It's happened in grocery stores, at restaurants, even at the doctor's office. People assume she doesn't understand things just because she looks different. But she understands everything. Another customer, a middle-aged man in a suit, clears his throat behind her. "Hey, some of us got places to be. Can we move this along?" Tracy forces a sweet smile. "Sorry, sir. Just a little complication." Lillian feels heat rise in her cheeks. The words sting. Complication. Like she's a problem. She grips her purse tighter. "Can you check again, please?" "My dad. He made sure everything was in order before he passed." Tracy sighs again, exaggerated this time, and finally types something into the system. A pause. Then her expression flickers, her brows drawing together slightly. Lillian notices. "What is it?" Tracy quickly schools her features back into indifference. "Nothing. Just taking a little longer than usual." But Lillian isn't convinced. She knows something changed. Why won't they just let her withdraw her money? Near the back of the bank, leaning casually against the wall, stands Shaquille O'Neal. Dressed in a simple hoodie and jeans, he doesn't immediately stand out, except, of course, for his sheer size. At 7 feet 1 inch, he's impossible to ignore. But right now, he's watching. Shaq had come in for a quick meeting with the bank's regional manager, but now his focus is elsewhere. He's seen enough in his lifetime to recognize what's happening. The small, subtle humiliations, the dismissive tones, the way people in power wield it over those they assume can't fight back. He watches as Lillian shifts from foot to foot, her anxiety growing. Watches as Tracy and Paul exchange smirks, as customers glance away uncomfortably, unwilling to intervene. He's seen this story before, and he's already decided he doesn't like how it's playing out. Lillian swallows hard. She doesn't want to make a scene, but frustration is bubbling inside her. "Can you just tell me what's wrong?" she asks, her voice firmer now. Tracy leans on the counter, fake sympathy dripping from her words. "Sweetheart, I just want to make sure you're not confused. Maybe you misunderstood something." Paul chuckles softly. "Happens all the time." Lillian's pulse spikes. They're trying to make her doubt herself. She won't let them. "My father set this up," she says, her voice shaking but unwavering. "He told me everything before he passed. I know my own account." The room is quieter now. People are listening. Tracy, sensing this, straightens up and glances toward the manager's office. The door is still closed. "Good. Let me just check one last thing," she says. But instead of checking, she simply stalls. Shaq pushes off the wall. Enough is enough. He doesn't make a big scene. Not yet. He simply steps forward, his size alone enough to shift the atmosphere. People notice. The security guard stiffens. Tracy's fingers freeze over the keyboard. Lillian, still unaware of who just moved behind her, exhales shakily. Shaq glances at the screen behind the counter. He doesn't need to be a banker to recognize an account balance when he sees one. The money is there. They were lying to her. His jaw tightens. "That's enough," he says, his voice low but firm. The air in the room changes instantly. Tracy's face drains of color. Paul straightens in his seat. The security guard shifts, looking uncertain. Lillian blinks up at the tall man standing beside her. She doesn't know him, but something about the way he just spoke makes her feel safer. Shaq crosses his arms, looking directly at Tracy. "You want to tell her the truth now, or should I?" Silence. Tension thickens. And just like that, the power in the room shifts. Lillian's fingers tremble slightly as she hands over her ID, but she tries not to let it show. She practiced this. She went over every step in her mind before coming here. Walk up to the counter, speak clearly, explain what you need. But standing here, face to face with Tracy Monroe, her confidence wavers. The teller leans back in her chair, eyes flicking from Lillian's ID to her face. Then, with a dramatic sigh, she tilts her head. "Are you sure you know what you're doing, sweetheart?" Tracy's voice is sweet, but not in a kind way. It's dripping with something else. Something sharp. Lillian nods quickly. "Yes, my dad set this up for me. Before he..." She hesitates, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Before he passed." Tracy's lips twitch, but it's not a smile. It's amusement. "Right," she drawls, tapping the ID against the counter. "Let's just take a look, shall we?" She doesn't move right away. Instead, she exchanges a glance with her coworker, Paul Whitaker, at the next counter. Paul raises an eyebrow, then smirks as he turns back to his own work. Lillian shifts on her feet. She doesn't like this. The looks. The way Tracy is drawing this out. Behind her, the line grows longer. A man in a gray suit exhales loudly, tapping his watch. A woman with 2 kids glances at her phone, impatient. People are waiting. People are watching. And yet, no one says a word. Tracy finally types something into her computer. She clicks her tongue, shaking her head. "Yeah, I don't see anything here for you." Lillian's heart drops. "What? But I have the account number right here." She fumbles with her purse, pulling out the folded paper where she wrote it down. Tracy doesn't even look at it. "I checked. Nothing's coming up." Paul leans slightly toward them. "Problem?" he asks. though his tone suggests he already knows the answer. Tracy shrugs dramatically. I don't know, Paul. She says she has an account, but there's nothing here. Paul whistles under his breath. That's tough. Lillian feels her stomach twist. This isn't right. Can you check again, please? She asks, trying to keep her voice steady. Tracy exhales loudly, like she's being asked to do the impossible. I mean, I can, but I don't think it'll change anything. She types a little more, slower this time. Then she stops and gives Lillian a long, pitying look. Are you sure this is your account? Maybe you got confused? Lillian blinks. Confused? Her fingers tighten around her purse strap. She knows exactly what she's doing. Her dad walked her through this before he passed. She memorized every detail. She knows this is her account. I'm not confused, she says, her voice a little stronger. Can you please check properly? Tracy sighs again and glances at Paul, who smirks but keeps typing on his own screen. Behind Lillian, the man in the suit groans. Come on, some of us have places to be. Lillian flinches. The humiliation burns hot in her chest. Tracy tilts her head, like she's trying to be patient. Look, I don't want to make this harder on you, okay? Maybe your dad said something, but maybe... She shrugs. Maybe he was mistaken. Maybe there was never any money here. Lillian's breath catches. The room feels smaller, hotter. She opens her mouth to argue, but Tracy is already turning away. Sorry, sweetheart, she says, reaching for the next customer. Can't help you. For a moment, Lillian just stands there. Her ears ring. Her vision blurs at the edges. This isn't happening. She turns slightly, looking around. The customers are still watching. They all saw, but no one speaks up. No one tells Tracy to check again. No one asks why a bank would lose someone's money. They just watch. Lillian swallows hard and forces herself to stand straighter. Please, she says again, but this time it's barely a whisper. Tracy doesn't even look at her. Lillian grips the paper in her hands. Her father's handwriting is right there. The proof. But what's the point if no one believes her? A lump forms in her throat. She blinks quickly, refusing to cry. And then, a deep voice cuts through the air like a blade. That's enough. The room shifts. The air seems to change. Slowly, heads turn toward the back of the bank. Shaquille O'Neal steps forward. The shift is instant. Everything stops. Paul's fingers freeze over his keyboard. Tracy's smug expression falters. Even the security guard at the door straightens up, because they know who he is. Shaq doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. His presence alone is enough to shift the energy in the room. He looks at Tracy. You want to try that again? Tracy blinks, clearly thrown off. Shaq steps up beside Lillian, towering over the counter. He doesn't look at her yet. His focus is entirely on Tracy. I've been standing here for the last 10 minutes, he says, his voice calm but firm. And I've heard everything. Tracy swallows. Paul suddenly finds his screen very interesting. Shaq tilts his head. Now, here's what we're gonna do. You're gonna check that account properly, and you're gonna do it right now. Tracy hesitates. Sir, Shaq's expression doesn't change. Now, a beat of silence. Then, slowly, Tracy turns back to her computer and starts typing. The room is dead quiet. No one dares to speak. Lillian grips her purse, barely breathing. What just happened? Tracy's fingers move faster now. For the first time, she's actually looking. A few tense seconds pass. Then, her face drains of color. Shaq sees it immediately. His jaw tightens. Well? Tracy hesitates, glancing at Paul, who shakes his head slightly. But it's too late. Shaq already knows. There it is, isn't it? His voice is quieter now, but no less powerful. The account exists. The money is there. Tracy's mouth opens and closes. She looks trapped. Lillian blinks, her heart hammering. She was right. Shaq leans forward slightly, voice dropping just enough that only Tracy can hear. Tell me, were you planning to make her leave without checking? Tracy stammers. I was just... Shaq straightens. No, you weren't. You were lying. A murmur ripples through the bank. The customers are paying attention now. Someone mutters, "Did she really try to scam her?" The suit-wearing man who was impatient earlier looks uncomfortable. The mother with 2 kids stares at Tracy like she's seeing her for the first time. The shift is undeniable. The bank employees no longer hold the power in the room. Tracy exhales shakily and finally looks at Lillian. I'm sorry for the confusion." Lillian just stares at her. She doesn't know what to say. But Shaq does. "That's not an apology," he says. "That's you covering yourself." Tracy flinches. Shaq turns to Lillian and finally looks her in the eye. "You don't have to take that." Lillian's throat tightens. For the first time today, someone is standing up for her. Shaq looks back at Tracy. "So here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna process her withdrawal, you're gonna do it correctly, and you're gonna do it now." Tracy nods quickly, hands shaking as she types. The money is in Lillian's account within minutes. Lillian stares at the screen, almost unable to believe it. It was there all along. Shaq nods once. "That's more like it." Then, just as quickly as he stepped in, he steps back. And the room finally breathes. A quiet tension hums beneath the fluorescent lights of Horizon First National Bank. The steady beeping of teller screens, the occasional clearing of throats, the rustling of paper, it all blends into the usual morning routine. But something is off. Something shifts the air. In the far corner of the bank, near the glass-walled offices, a massive figure leans against the wall, arms folded across his broad chest. Shaquille O'Neal, Big Shaq. At first, no one notices him. Despite his 7'1" frame, he has a way of blending in when he wants to. Dressed in a simple gray hoodie, black jeans, and sneakers, he doesn't scream celebrity status. No flashing jewelry, no entourage, just a quiet observer. But his eyes miss nothing. He watches the interaction at the counter, how the young woman, Lillian Carter, clutches her purse, her face flushing with discomfort. He sees the way the teller smirks, how her coworker nudges her with amusement. He watches how Lillian's shoulders tighten, how she shifts on her feet, clearly anxious. And then there's the moment that makes his jaw tighten, when the teller tilts her head and calls her sweetheart in that patronizing tone. Shaq has been in enough rooms, seen enough situations to recognize disrespect when it's happening right in front of him. Shaq wasn't always a millionaire. He wasn't always a household name. There was a time when people dismissed him too, when teachers assumed he wasn't smart, when people spoke about him instead of to him. He knew what it was like to feel invisible, to be talked down to have someone decide your worth before you even open your mouth. And now, he's seeing it happen again. To Lillian. He knows that look in her eyes, the hesitation before she speaks, the uncertainty of whether or not she should push back, the fear of causing a scene. Shaq shifts his stance, his hands pressing deeper into his hoodie pockets. He could step in now. His name alone would be enough to make the tellers backpedal. But instead, he waits, because he wants to see how far they're willing to go. The room buzzes with quiet impatience. The customers in line glance at their watches, shifting on their feet. The tellers continue dragging out the process, making a show of typing, shaking their heads, whispering to each other. Lillian's voice gets quieter. She knows something is wrong, but she doesn't know how to fight it. Shaq's jaw clenches. He's seen people like this before. People who use power in all the wrong ways. Not to lift others up, but to push them down just because they can. This isn't about policy. This is about control. He watches as Tracy Monroe, the teller, leans in just a little, her voice dropping to a patronizing hush. "Sweetheart, are you sure you understood what your father told you?" Maybe he was confused. Shaq has heard enough. He pushes off the wall, moving with quiet purpose toward the counter. The moment he takes his first step, the air in the bank shifts. It's not immediate recognition. People don't gasp or rush over. But they sense something. A shift in energy. A shift in presence. Even the security guard near the door stiffens slightly, straightening his posture. Shaq doesn't say anything yet. He just walks, slow and steady. His footsteps a quiet weight against the polished floor. Lillian, unaware of him, is still trying to reason with Tracy. "Please, can you check again? It's important." Tracy sighs dramatically, rolling her eyes. I already did, hun. If it's not in the system, it's not there. Paul, her coworker, smirks. Maybe she got the wrong bank. A quiet chuckle escapes from somewhere nearby. Not loud, but enough. Enough to make Shaq's hands curl into loose fists. Enough to make Lillian's shoulders drop just a little more. Shaq stops right behind Lillian. His presence is like a sudden shadow over the counter. Large, unignorable, impossible to dismiss. And then, he speaks. That's enough. The words are low, firm, and final. And suddenly, everything stops. The chuckles die mid-breath. The typing on keyboard ceases. Paul, who had been smirking seconds ago, visibly tenses. And Tracy? She freezes. Slowly she looks up, and for the first time, realization dawns. Her eyes widen slightly, flicking up, up, up. Her mouth opens, closes, then opens again. Shaq doesn't have to introduce himself. She knows. Everyone in the room knows. The energy in the bank is completely different now. Shaq doesn't have to raise his voice. He doesn't have to threaten. His presence alone is the message. His dark eyes lock onto Tracy's. Check. The account. Again. Tracy scrambles. Her fingers fly over the keyboard now, her posture completely different from before. No more smirking. No more condescension. Shaq doesn't look away from her. He doesn't need to. He knows what's happening. She sees the account now. She sees the money now. She sees the proof she pretended didn't exist. But she's trapped. She can't deny it anymore. Shaq raises an eyebrow. Well? Tracy swallows hard. Paul shifts uncomfortably beside her, pretending to focus on his screen. Coward. Lillian, standing beside Shaq, still doesn't know what's happening. She's too used to being ignored, dismissed, overlooked. But not today. Shaq finally turns to her. You got an account here, right? His voice is softer now, but still firm. Lillian hesitates. Then, for the first time in this entire encounter, someone actually looks her in the eye. She nods. Shaq nods back. Then, they need to give you your money. The entire bank is watching now. The customers who were impatient a few minutes ago, they're paying attention. The security guard? He's near the door, unsure of what to do. And Tracy? She's sweating. Because she knows there's no way out of this. She clears her throat, her voice noticeably smaller now. I found the account. Shaq tilts his head. Oh, you found it? He repeats, his voice dripping with disbelief. Tracy's face burns. There was a technical issue, that's all. Lillian frowns. She knows that's a lie. Shaq does too. But instead of calling her out further, he lets the silence do the work. It's so much worse. Tracy, under the weight of his stare and the eyes of everyone around her, crumbles. She quickly begins processing the transaction. I'll just, withdraw the amount now. Her fingers fly over the keyboard, no hesitation this time. The printer whirs. The receipt prints. The money is counted. Lillian finally gets what she came for. And Shaq? He doesn't move. Not yet. Not until Tracy finally, with shaking hands, slides the cash across the counter. Lillian stares at it. And this time, she doesn't hesitate. She takes the money. And she stands taller. Shaq exhales slowly, then steps back. He doesn't have to say anything else. The lesson has been taught. Not through threats, not through yelling, but through presence, through power used the right way. And as he turns to leave, one last glance at Tracy tells him she'll never make this mistake again. Because now, she knows someone's always watching. Lillian grips the strap of her purse, her knuckles turning white. The weight of the stairs pressing against her skin makes her feel smaller, but she refuses to back down. Please, she says, her voice trembling but determined. My dad left it for me. Tracy Monroe lets out a sharp breath through her nose, shaking her head like she's dealing with a stubborn child. Listen, honey, people don't just leave. That's enough. The voice isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. It rolls through the room like thunder, low, commanding, impossible to ignore. A hush sweeps across the bank as heads instinctively turn toward the sound. The casual murmur of customers, the rhythmic clicking of keyboards, Everything comes to a sudden stop. Shaquille O'Neal steps forward. His presence alone shifts the air, not just because of his size, though that helps, but because of the authority in his stance. He moves with the kind of confidence that comes from knowing his own power. At the counter, Tracy stiffens, her fingers frozen over the keyboard. She looks up, her expression flickering between surprise and nervousness. Shaq doesn't blink, doesn't move fast, doesn't need to. Is there a problem here? His voice is calm, almost casual, but there's a weight behind it, the kind that makes people think before they answer. Tracy swallows. Paul, her co-worker, suddenly seems very interested in the documents on his desk. The customers in line lean in slightly, sensing the shift in power. Nobody breathes. Tracy opens her mouth, then closes it again. The smugness from earlier? Gone. She flicks a glance toward Paul, as if hoping he'll step in, but he pointedly avoids her gaze. Well, Shaq prompts, his dark eyes locking onto hers. You were saying something about what people don't do? Tracy forces a nervous laugh. I was just saying we have to be careful with transactions. We can't just… Shaq lifts a brow. Right. And by careful, you mean making a young woman feel like she doesn't belong here. Tracy's face flushes. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Shaq replies smoothly. I heard you loud and clear. Lillian looks between them, her hands trembling slightly. This is the first time someone is standing up for her. She's used to being dismissed, ignored, made to feel like she's asking for too much. But this is different. Shaq shifts his stance, placing both hands on the counter. His size alone dwarfs the entire station. Here's what's gonna happen, he says, his voice steady. You're gonna check that account again, and you're gonna do it properly this time. Tracy blinks rapidly, like her brain is trying to catch up to the situation. She glances toward the branch manager's office. The door is still shut. No backup is coming. She's alone in this. She licks her lips. Now. Shaq doesn't raise his voice. But the way he says it might as well be an order. Tracy's hands fly to the keyboard. Her confidence is gone, replaced with a sense of urgency. She doesn't dare stall this time. The computer screen glows in front of her. The rhythmic clacking of keys is the only sound in the room. Paul finally speaks up. Should I… Shaq cuts him a glance. Paul shuts up immediately. The tension in the room thickens. Every second feels stretched, elongated, like the entire bank is waiting for something to happen. Then, Tracy stiffens. Her face drains of color. Shaq sees it instantly. Found something? She swallows hard. Shaq tilts his head. I'll take that as a yes. Lillian leans forward slightly, hesitant. Is my money there? Tracy hesitates. She's caught. There's no way out of this now. Yes, she finally mutters. Lillian gasps softly. Shaq lets the silence hang for a beat before he speaks again. Oh, he says slowly. So, when you told her it didn't exist, that was a lie? Tracy flinches. Paul shifts awkwardly in his chair, clearly regretting every choice that led him to this moment. The customers, who were once too busy to care, are now fully invested. A murmur spreads through the room. Someone near the back whispers, "Did she really try to scam her?" Shaq leans in slightly. Not enough to be threatening, but just enough. "Do you want to tell me why you thought it was okay to treat her like that?" Tracy's eyes dart around, looking for an escape. But there is none. Not this time. Lillian looks at Tracy, her brows furrowing. You were never going to let me take my money, were you?" Tracy's throat bobs. Shaq cuts in smoothly. Because what? You thought she wouldn't push back? Thought no one would notice? Tracy won't meet his eyes. Paul shifts again, trying to create distance from the disaster unfolding beside him. The tension is unbearable now. Tracy's face burns with humiliation. Shaq finally sighs, shaking his head. See, this is the problem. You thought you could get away with it, and maybe on another day you would have. He gestures toward Lillian, but not today. Tracy looks down, her hands clenched at her sides. Shaq straightens. Now, you're gonna apologize. Tracy's eyes snap up. Shaq doesn't blink. You heard me. Tracy looks like she wants the floor to swallow her whole. The entire bank is watching, waiting. She exhales shakily. I'm sorry for the confusion. Shaq smirks. That's not an apology, he says. That's an excuse. Tracy's jaw tightens, but she knows she has no choice. She turns to Lillian, avoiding eye contact. I'm sorry for how I treated you. It's forced. It's reluctant. But it's something. Lillian, still shaken, nods once. She isn't sure how to feel. Shaq does, though. You'll do better next time, he says simply. It's not a request. It's a fact. Tracy nods stiffly. Paul? He keeps his head down, hoping he won't be dragged into this any further. Shaq looks at Lillian and offers a small nod. You got what you need? Lillian clutches her money. For the first time today, she doesn't feel small. She nods. Yeah. Shaq steps back, satisfied. Good. And just like that, the room finally breathes again. As Shaq turns to leave, the weight of the moment lingers. Paul shifts uncomfortably. Tracy stares at her screen, pretending to work. The customers in line exchange looks. Some impressed, some embarrassed they didn't step in sooner. And Lillian? She stands a little taller. She turns, glancing at Shaq's retreating form. She never expected a stranger to defend her, to make people listen. And she'll never forget it. Neither will anyone else in this bank. Because today they all learned something. When Shaquille O'Neal speaks, the whole room listens. A heavy silence blankets the room, thick as fog. No one moves. No one speaks. Every eye in the bank is locked onto the towering figure of Shaquille O'Neal, his presence casting an invisible weight over the counter. He doesn't need to raise his voice. He doesn't need to slam his fist down in frustration. He simply tilts his head slightly, his deep voice cutting through the still air with effortless precision. Did you even check the system? Or did you decide she wasn't worth your time? Tracy Monroe, the teller, freezes. Her fingers hover over the keyboard, motionless. Her lips part slightly, but no words come out. She wasn't expecting that. Shaq watches her carefully, his expression unreadable. He's not impatient. He's not angry. But he's waiting. And in this moment, that's worse than anything else. A beat passes, then another. Tracy scrambles. Her hands fly to the keyboard, typing furiously, her forced calm from earlier completely gone. She's searching for a way out. But there isn't one. The tension thickens, pressing down on everyone in the room. Even Paul Whitaker, her co-worker, leans slightly away, like he doesn't want to be associated with whatever's about to happen. Then, it happens. Tracy's face drains of color. She stops typing. Her entire posture stiffens. The account is there. The money is there. She was lying. A few sharp gasps ripple through the crowd. Customers shift, exchanging stunned looks. Now, people care. Tracy swallows hard. Her hands are clammy, fingers still hovering uselessly over the keys. She knows what this means. Shaq doesn't move. He doesn't speak. He just watches her. That's when she panics. I must have made a mistake earlier, she stammers, forcing out a shaky laugh. The system must have... Stop. Shaq's voice isn't loud, but the finality in it makes her shut up instantly. He leans forward, placing both hands on the counter. His massive frame looms over her, and for the first time, Tracy looks genuinely nervous. You didn't make a mistake, Shaq says, his tone unwavering. You chose to ignore her. Tracy flinches. She knows she can't deny it, but Shaq isn't done. You didn't check because you didn't think she mattered, he continues, his voice slow, deliberate. You looked at her, and you decided she wasn't important enough. More whispers spread through the room. A man in a suit shifts uncomfortably. A young woman near the back frowns, shaking her head. For the first time, people see it for what it is. Not an accident. Not a simple misunderstanding. Discrimination. Lillian stares at the screen. Her money. The money her father left for her. It was always there. A burning sensation rises in her chest. Anger, hurt, something she doesn't have a name for. She clenches her hands into fists. You lied to me. she whispers. Tracy's head snaps toward her. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. Lillian's voice is stronger now. You looked at me and decided I wasn't worth the effort. Tracy opens her mouth, then closes it again. Lillian's hands tremble at her sides, not with fear, with power. You made me feel stupid, she says, her voice thick with emotion. You tried to make me think I was wrong, but I wasn't. She lifts her chin, eyes burning. I was never wrong. Tracy can't respond. She can't even look at her. The weight of her own choices crushes her. A murmur builds in the bank, growing louder. Unbelievable, someone mutters. A woman near the front crosses her arms. If she was a different customer, you would have helped her immediately. Paul clears his throat, shifting nervously. He looks like he wants to disappear. The security guard at the door, who had been passive the entire time, suddenly straightens. He's realizing too late that he should have stepped in sooner. Shaq tilts his head, his expression unreadable. What do you think should happen now, Tracy? Tracy's eyes widen. I don't know, He gives her a long, hard stare. Then he looks at the customers. What do you think? He asks. The bank falls silent. No one expected to be included in this. A woman in a leather jacket speaks first. She should be reported. She should be fired, someone else says. Tracy's breath catches. Panic flashes across her face. Shaq lets the weight of their words settle. Then he turns back to Tracy. Fix this, he says simply. The reluctant correction. Tracy, shaking now, types furiously. Within seconds, the full amount appears on the screen. She prints out the withdrawal slip, her fingers fumbling slightly as she counts the cash. When she finally pushes the stack of bills toward Lillian, her hands are unsteady. Lillian doesn't move. Shaq nods toward her. Go ahead. Lillian reaches out, her fingers brushing against the money. It feels strange. Not because of the money itself, but because of what it represents. She wasn't given this. She fought for it. For the first time, she realizes she isn't powerless. She takes the cash. Tracy swallows hard. I'm sorry for the confusion. Shaq laughs once. It's a low, unimpressed sound. That wasn't confusion, he says. That was intentional. Tracy looks away. She has no argument left. Shaq doesn't push further. He doesn't need to. The entire room already knows the truth. Shaq turns to Lillian. You good? Lillian nods, still clutching her money, her grip firm. Shaq straightens and looks around the room. His gaze sweeps over Paul, the manager's closed office, the customers who had been silent until now. His message isn't just for Tracy. It's for all of them. This, he says, his voice even, is why you speak up. When you see something wrong, you don't look away. Paul shifts guiltily. The security guard looks down. Even some of the customers glance at the floor. Shaq exhales slowly, then steps back. The moment feels final. A shift in power, a shift in awareness, one that no one in this room will ever forget. Lillian follows Shaq toward the door. As she passes Tracy, she doesn't shrink back. She doesn't say thank you for something she was always owed. She just walks past her. And this time, she stands tall. As Shaq pushes open the glass door, the bright sunlight pours in, washing over them. The weight that had settled in Lillian's chest all morning feels lighter. She turns to Shaq, hesitation flickering in her eyes. Why did you do that? Shaq looks down at her and smiles. Because it was the right thing to do. Lillian nods slowly, letting that sink in. And for the first time in a long time, she believes it. Because today she didn't just fight for her money. She fought for herself. The room isn't the same anymore. Where there was once smug indifference, there is now fear. Where there was once silence, there is now murmuring. And where Lillian Carter once stood alone, she now has the undeniable force of Shaquille O'Neal standing beside her. Shaq crosses his arms, his broad frame casting a shadow over the counter. His expression is unreadable, his gaze fixed on Tracy Monroe, who suddenly looks very, very small. So, Shaq says, his voice smooth but firm. What now? Tracy stammers, her face paling as she scrambles for words, for excuses, for a way out. The door to the branch manager's office bursts open. Greg Whitman, the man who actually runs this place, rushes forward. His collar is damp with sweat, his eyes flicking between Shaq, Lillian, and the stunned customers who are still watching, whispering. "Mr. O'Neal," Greg gasps, forcing a stiff smile. "We, had no idea there was a misunderstanding here." Shaq doesn't blink. He lets Greg squirm. Greg swallows, adjusting his tie. "If you'd just given us a moment, we would have—" "Yeah, I bet," Shaq cuts him off. "And if I wasn't standing here, you still wouldn't." Greg winces. He knows it's true. And now, so does everyone else. Tracy looks to Greg for backup, but he doesn't even glance at her. He's too busy trying to figure out how to damage control the mess she created. Greg clears his throat, turning on his corporate charm. "Mr. O'Neal, please understand, we take customer service very seriously. If there was any inconvenience—" Shaq raises a brow. "Inconvenience?" Lillian suddenly finds her voice. She tightens her grip on her purse, her pulse still racing. But when she speaks, her words are clear. You were going to steal from me." The entire room stills. Tracy's eyes widen. "No, But there's no good answer. No way to explain what just happened. Because Lillian is right. She wasn't just ignored. She wasn't just brushed aside. They were about to steal from her, and they thought no one would notice. Greg is spiraling. His nervous smile falters completely. "I assure you," he begins, holding up his hands. "This was just a misunderstanding. We value all our customers." Shaq tilts his head. "All of them?" Greg hesitates. Shaq gestures toward Lillian. "Because from where I'm standing, it sure didn't look like you valued her." Lillian's chest tightens. She spent her whole life being ignored, being dismissed, being treated as less. But for the first time, someone is calling it out for what it really is. Greg opens his mouth, then closes it again. The customers in the bank aren't distracted anymore. A woman near the front nods. "He's right." A man in a button-up frowns. "This is unacceptable." The whispers spread. Greg notices. He's losing control of the room. Greg straightens his suit, forcing another smile. "Of course, we deeply regret any confusion. Tracy," he shoots her a warning glare, "will personally ensure that Miss Carter is compensated for her trouble." Tracy nods quickly. "Yes, of course. We can even offer a small—" "Stop," Shaq says, cutting her off effortlessly. Tracy flinches. Shaq turns to Lillian. "What do you want to do?" Lillian freezes. No one has ever asked her that before. Not in situations like this. Not when she's been wronged. People always make decisions for her. But Shaq, he's giving her control. Lillian blinks, her heartbeat hammering. She thinks. She looks at Tracy, who is squirming in place, and Greg, who just wants this over with. Then, for the first time ever, she decides. Lillian's choice. "I want proof," Lillian says finally, her voice steady. Greg frowns. "Proof?" Lillian nods. "I want it in writing that you tried to deny me my own money. That way you can't pretend it didn't happen later." Tracy sucks in a breath. Greg's face drains of color. Shaq grins. The bank manager quickly backpedals. "Miss Carter, we'd be happy to resolve this internally." "No," Shaq interrupts smoothly. "She asked for proof." Greg hesitates. Then he realizes. This isn't just about today. If they put it in writing, if there's official documentation, this could haunt them. It could go public. Greg shuffles nervously, running out of options. Then, he caves. "Fine," he mutters. "I'll draft a formal statement." Tracy looks like she might faint. Greg signals to a nearby assistant who rushes off to grab paperwork. Lillian doesn't move. She doesn't fidget. She doesn't shrink. She just waits. Because now, she holds the power. Minutes later, Greg slides a printed statement across the counter. It's formal, cold, and corporate. It acknowledges that an employee improperly handled a transaction and misinformed the customer about her account. It states that the customer was denied access to their own funds without valid reasoning. It stops just short of saying what really happened. But Lillian knows. She reads every word. And then? She takes out a pen and signs it. Greg forces a smile. There. All resolved. Shaq chuckles. Sure, he says, taking a step back. I'm sure you'll be hearing from people about it soon, though. Greg's smile stiffens. Because he knows. This won't stay quiet. The second Lillian and Shaq step outside, the crisp air hits differently. Lillian clutches her purse, the proof still in her hands. Her father's money is finally hers, but more importantly, so is her dignity. Shaq watches her for a moment, then nods approvingly. You handled that. Lillian looks up at him, unsure. I did? He grins. Yeah, you did. She lets that sink in. And for the first time in a long time, she believes it. The silence inside Horizon First National Bank has been broken. The tension that once hung heavy in the air has shifted into something new. Outrage. People are no longer just watching. They are speaking. A woman in line steps forward, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. I saw everything, she says, her voice filled with disgust. That was disgraceful. A man behind her nods in agreement. She deserves a real apology. The murmurs spread, growing louder. A low hum of agreement fills the room, voices layering over each other. This isn't right. She shouldn't have had to go through this. That teller straight up lied to her. The bank has lost control. Greg Whitman, the branch manager, sees it happening. He feels the shift. The bank, once a place where they held the power, is now on the defensive. Greg raises his hands in a pathetic attempt to de-escalate the situation. All right, let's not turn this into a bigger issue. We can fix this, privately. No. Shaq's voice is calm, but the single word lands with force. Greg flinches. Shaq shakes his head, his gaze steadily locked onto the manager. This isn't just about money, Shaq says. It's about respect. Greg shifts uncomfortably under his stare. Of course we respect all our customers. Shaq lets out a low chuckle, but there's no humor in it. That right? He asks, tilting his head slightly. Because from where I was standing, it looked like you and your people went out of your way to make her feel like she didn't belong here. The bank employees look down. Tracy Monroe, the teller who started it all, seems to shrink into herself. Paul, her co-worker, has turned completely silent, hoping to avoid getting pulled into this. But the customers aren't letting this go. A woman near the back raises her voice. If he hadn't stepped in, you would have let her leave with nothing. She could have lost money that was rightfully hers, a man adds. The energy in the room is different now, because this isn't just about Lillian anymore. It's about all the times someone was treated unfairly, but didn't have a Shaquille O'Neal standing behind them. And now, everyone sees it. Shaq turns to Lillian. He doesn't say anything at first, just looks at her. Really looks at her. She's standing taller than before, shoulders back, chin up. She's still holding onto her purse tightly, but her grip isn't from fear anymore. It's from strength. Shaq nods. You don't let anybody make you feel small. His voice is steady, but there's something deeper beneath it, something personal. Lillian blinks, her eyes shining with emotion. She nods back. Shaq gestures toward the crowd. See all these people? Lillian turns slightly, looking at the customers watching her. They see you, Shaq continues, and they're standing with you. Lillian swallows hard. For the first time, she truly believes it. Greg exhales, realizing he's lost. He turns to Lillian, forcing a stiff, corporate smile. Miss Carter, we sincerely regret the misunderstanding today. Shaq steps forward just slightly. Greg immediately stops talking. Shaq doesn't have to say a word. He just raises an eyebrow. Greg gets the message. He corrects himself. Greg clears his throat. I'm sorry. Truly sorry. Lillian tilts her head slightly. She's heard empty apologies before. This time, she can tell it's real. Not because Greg suddenly found his conscience, but because he had no choice. And that's a victory. Shaq claps a hand gently on Lillian's shoulder. "Look what you did," he says. Lillian frowns slightly. "What?" Shaq gestures around. "You changed the whole room." Lillian glances at the customers, the employees, the manager who's still standing awkwardly behind the counter. The shift in power is undeniable. She did that. She looks back at Shaq. I didn't do it alone." Shaq grins. "Nah, but you let it." Lillian lets out a small, unsteady breath. She's never let anything before. But today she did. Shaq gives her shoulder a light squeeze before stepping back. "You good?" Lillian nods. This time there's no hesitation. "I'm good." As Shaq and Lillian turn to leave, the energy in the bank lingers. Tracy Monroe doesn't move from behind the counter. She knows her career is never going to be the same after this. Paul avoids looking at anyone, pretending to work. Greg Whitman watches them go, knowing his name will probably end up in places he doesn't want it to. And the customers? They won't forget. They'll talk about this moment. They'll remember that they saw one of the biggest athletes in history stand up for a woman with Down syndrome when no one else did. And maybe, just maybe, next time they won't wait for someone like Shaq to do the right thing. Maybe next time they'll be the ones to speak up first. By the time Shaquille O'Neal and Lillian Carter step outside the Horizon First National Bank, the world has already begun to change. Neither of them knows it yet. But inside the bank, near the back of the line, someone was recording the entire thing. And now, the world is watching. It starts as just another upload, a grainy, slightly shaky video posted by a woman in a red leather jacket who saw everything unfold. She doesn't caption it with much, just a short, simple sentence. Shaq just stood up for this girl at the bank. Watch what happens. She hits post. Within minutes, it spreads. Within hours, it explodes. The title shifts as news outlets pick it up, resharing and analyzing every moment. Shaq defends woman with Down syndrome from bank discrimination. Heroic. Shaquille O'Neal calls out unfair bank treatment. This is how you use power. Watch Shaq in action. The video floods social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Millions of people watch in outrage. The way Tracy Monroe dismissed Lillian. The moment she got caught lying. The way Shaq stepped in, calm but unshakable. And most importantly, the moment Lillian found her voice. The internet rallies behind her. The next morning, the CEO of Horizon First National Bank wakes up to the worst kind of storm. His phone is blowing up, his inbox is flooded, and his company's reputation shredded. Boycott Horizon Bank is trending. People are calling for answers, for justice, for firing everyone involved, and most importantly, for Lillian Carter to get the respect she deserved in the first place. Inside the very same bank branch where it all happened, things are falling apart. Tracy Monroe is pale. She hasn't said a word all morning, but her hands won't stop shaking. Paul, her co-worker, keeps his head down, pretending to work, but everyone knows he was part of it. Greg Whitman, the branch manager, looks like he hasn't slept. Because the corporate office? They aren't happy. They've sent executives to deal with the fallout, and it doesn't take long for the first domino to fall. The official statement is cold and rehearsed. After conducting a full review of the incident that occurred in our Atlanta branch, Horizon First National Bank has terminated the employment of Tracy Monroe, effective immediately. Discrimination of any kind is unacceptable, and we are taking steps to ensure that our employees receive additional training on inclusivity, fairness, and proper customer service etiquette. They don't say it outright, but everyone knows the truth. Tracy wasn't fired because the bank suddenly grew a conscience. She was fired because she got caught. She leaves the bank with her head down, her face hidden behind oversized sunglasses. The cameras are already waiting for her outside. She doesn't say a word. She doesn't have to. Her silence? It's already an admission of guilt. Greg Whitman isn't fired, not yet. But he's suspended indefinitely pending an internal investigation. In corporate terms, that means he won't be back. He knows it. His employees know it. And when he packs up his office later that evening, he doesn't bother saying goodbye to anyone. Because no one would say it back. Lillian Carter doesn't expect what happens next. She doesn't expect to wake up to thousands of messages from strangers. She doesn't expect to see her name trending on social media. She doesn't expect to be called brave, but she is. And now, the world sees it. She scrolls through the comments, her heart pounding. Lillian, you are incredible. Never let anyone make you feel small again. You stood up for yourself and we all saw it. We're with you. Your dad would be so proud of you. That last one? It makes her eyes burn with tears. Because she knows it's true. She wishes he could have been here to see it. But somehow deep in her heart, she thinks he already knows. When reporters finally catch up with Shaquille O'Neal, shoving microphones in his face, he keeps it simple. It wasn't about me, he says, shrugging. It was about her. The reporters push for more. But Shaq? He doesn't need to say anything else, because the world already saw the video. They already saw what he did. They already saw what Lillian did. And at the end of the day, that's the only message that matters. The air outside Horizon First National Bank feels lighter. Gone is the heavy tension that had settled in Lillian Carter's chest the moment she walked in. Gone is the fear, the doubt, the helplessness. She steps onto the sidewalk, the sun hitting her face, and for the first time in a long time, she feels seen. Not for what people assume about her, but for who she truly is. Beside her, Shaquille O'Neal stands with his hands in his pockets, a satisfied smile on his face. Lillian turns to him, her eyes still filled with questions. Why did you help me? Shaq looks down at her, his smile widening just slightly. Because I've been where you are. Lillian frowns. Shaquille O'Neal, the famous millionaire, the basketball legend? She can't imagine someone like him ever being overlooked. He must see the confusion on her face because he chuckles, shaking his head. People see my size now and think I've always had power. He glances at the ground for a second before looking back at her. But I remember being a kid, standing in rooms where no one took me seriously. I know what it's like to feel like you don't matter. Lillian takes in his words, processing them. She doesn't feel alone anymore. She looks down at the stack of bills in her hands, the money her father left for her, the money she had to fight for. And then she looks back up at Shaq. I want to be like that too. Shaq's grin turns proud. You already are. Lillian lets out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. And as Shaq steps away, ready to continue on with his day, she stands a little taller. The streets of downtown Atlanta buzz with life as Lillian makes her way home. But today, something is different. She notices the way people look at her, not with pity, not with indifference, but with acknowledgement. A woman passing by nods at her. A man at a bus stop gives her a small smile. It's subtle, but it's there. And for the first time, Lillian isn't shrinking under their gazes. She owns her space. By the time she reaches her apartment, her phone has blown up. She unlocks the screen and pauses. There are hundreds of notifications, new followers, comments, messages. Her name is everywhere. She opens a message request and freezes. It's from a woman in Chicago. Lillian, I don't know you, but I saw your story. My daughter has Down syndrome, and watching you stand up for yourself made her believe she can too. Thank you. Lillian stares at the screen. Something in her chest tightens. She scrolls through more messages. You inspire me. Your story gave me the courage to speak up today. You are stronger than you know. Lillian's fingers hover over the keyboard, unsure of what to say. Then finally she types, Thank you. I didn't think anyone would care. But maybe we're all stronger than we think. She hits send. And just like that, she's no longer just the girl who was humiliated at the bank. She's something more. That night, as she's scrolling through more messages, her phone rings. She doesn't recognize the number, but something tells her to answer. She presses the button. Hello? A deep, familiar voice comes through the speaker. How's it feel to be a leader? Lillian laughs, shaking her head. Shaq? Yeah, he says easily. You good? She leans back on her couch, looking up at the ceiling, letting everything that happened today settle in. I think so. Shaq hums. Good, 'cause I got one last thing to tell you. Lillian waits. You didn't just stand up for yourself today, he says. You stood up for people who couldn't. And that's what real strength looks like. Lillian smiles. She doesn't know what's next for her, but for the first time she isn't afraid to find out. Because now, she knows her worth. And no one will ever take that from her again. How many times have you seen something unfair and looked away? Lillian's story isn't just hers. It's a reminder that silence protects the wrong people. Next time you witness injustice, don't wait for a Shaq to step in. Be the one who speaks up. Because dignity isn't given, it's demanded.